Hello, my YouTube family. This is the OG Crypto New Jack coming at you with some juicy news today. But before I begin, let me say I'm not a financial advisor. Anything you see or hear in this video is for educational and informational purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice. Remember to do your own research and consult with a qualified professional before making investment decisions. Okay, let's begin. The total crypto market right now stands at 1.1 trillion, is up 0.7%. Coming in at number one is Bitcoin at 25,879. Coming in at number two is Ethereum at 1,739. My beloved XRP is coming in at number six at 52 cents. Crypto Bubbles has Phantom, that is the top gainer at 7.6. And it looks like it's going to be Mash as the biggest loser, down 3.4%. The Crypto Fear and Greed Index is coming in fear at number 45. And yes, people, the Hinman emails have been released, unredacted, and everything is really looking good for Ripple and XRP. I'm going to start it off with a comment from Stuart Alderati. It's been 5 years since Bill Hinman gave his infamous speech, and through the SEC's lawsuit against Ripple and 7 court orders, we can finally share what happened behind the scenes through the now public emails/drafts of the speech. He goes on to say, we can now all see Hinman ignored multiple warnings that his speech contained made-up analysis with no basis in law, was divorced from the Howey factors, exposed regulatory gaps, and would create not just confusion, but greater confusion in the market. And I'm going to play this video in its entirety. Here we go.
On June 14, 2018, then SEC Director of Corporation Finance William Hinman gave a high-profile speech where he declared that a token is not a security when it becomes, quote, sufficiently decentralized. But internal emails and documents show that senior SEC officials repeatedly warned Hinman that his speech wasn't true to the law and would greatly confuse the markets even more than they already were. Now, after more than 2 years and 7 court orders, we can finally share some of what we found in the Hinman speech documents. The SEC head of trading and markets warned Hinman that he was making up factors that, quote, go beyond the typical Howey analysis, as in not in the law, and that the speech could lead to not just confusion, but greater confusion on what is a security. Hinman ignored him.
If the network on which the token or coin is to function is sufficiently decentralized, and the purchasers no longer have a reasonable expectation that a person or a group is going to carry out essential managerial or entrepreneurial efforts, those assets might not represent an investment contract.
The same official told Hinman he should tie his speech, quote, more closely and explicitly to the Howey analysis. Hinman not only ignored him, but deliberately created factors beyond those identified by the Supreme Court in the Howey case.
I wanted to just note a few things. This list is not meant to be exhaustive, but these are things that we look at.
The SEC's own general counsel warned specifically that it's legally irrelevant if someone retains a stake in a token and is motivated to take action to increase its value, and that Hinman should delete it from the speech. And once again, Hinman ignored them, and said without any legal support that it was important to ask.
Has that person or group retained a stake or other interest in the digital asset such that it would be motivated to expend efforts to cause an increase in the value of the digital asset?
Both trading and markets and the general counsel also disagreed with Hinman's belief that if a network was sufficiently decentralized, information asymmetries would no longer exist, noting that a network creator would likely have more information than a retail holder, using Vitalik Buterin as an example. They warned Hinman that by creating this, quote, other category and focusing on information asymmetries, he was exposing a regulatory gap that the SEC may not have the jurisdiction to fill. Again, Hinman ignored them.
As a network becomes more truly decentralized, the ability to even to identify a promoter or to make the requisite, and someone that could actually make the requisite disclosures becomes in many cases difficult or and perhaps much less meaningful.
On June 4th, Hinman wrote that he didn't see a, quote, need to regulate Ether as a security, and set up a call with Ethereum's co-founder Vitalik Buterin later that week to, quote, confirm our understanding. On June 11th, the SEC's own general counsel advised against including any direct statement about Ether in the speech because it would be difficult for the SEC to, quote, take a different position on Ether in the future. The next day, Trading and Markets wrote that the statements about Ether were, quote, likely to create more confusion. Hinman ignored all of them and decided to make headlines, picking winners and losers instead.
Moreover, putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network, its decentralized structure, we believe current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transactions.
The emails show that Hinman knew he wasn't following the law. He knew he was making things up. And he knew that his speech would result in greater confusion in an already confused market. But Hinman went ahead with the speech anyway. And the SEC, despite knowing all this, touted the speech repeatedly. The SEC chairman himself pointed market participants to the speech.
Bill Hinman recently outlined the approach we take to evaluate whether a digital asset is a security. And I encourage you to take a look at Bill's speech, which is available on our website.
The SEC knew the speech didn't follow the law. The SEC knew the speech would create greater confusion. And the SEC knew Hinman was making things up. So why is the Hinman speech still on the SEC's website? Why was it ever allowed to be given at all? And why has the SEC pushed a policy of regulation by enforcement, falsely insisting the rules are clear?
And they're not clear at all. Brett Garlinghouse put out a statement as well. he states it's absolutely unconscionable that a regulator, when presented with so much pushback on what he was about to say, how he compiled this fake test in the first place, decided to move forward anyway and throw an entire industry into chaos. For the SEC to sue Chris Lawson and me personally for allegedly selling unregistered securities when their own division head deliberately created confusion about this, well, I don't have a single polite word to describe this deplorable, politically motivated overreach. Seeing the depth to which the SEC has essentially weaponized the lack of regulatory clarity through enforcement action since the speech was given, there's no surprise that we can call bluff on their claims to just come in and register as nothing but in bad faith. Okay, moving on. We have Charles Gasparino, who I don't know, he started off as a strong supporter for Ripple, and then he got a little shaky, and then he kind of came on board again, and then he's shaky again. I do not understand. What more proof do you need to see the corruption and the fraud that took place in the SEC? But apparently it's not enough for Charles Gasparino. He writes fascinating stuff. I know the knee jerk from the XRP community will be this proves a fraud. It doesn't. It does prove Hester Peirce's argument. We need a safe harbor in crypto. We need to stop regulation by enforcement, and Congress needs to set a digital coin ground rules now. And that is just unbelievable. I mean, how much more do you need to see where you can call a fraud, corruption? Brad Garlinghouse responds to that and says, I won't use the word fraud. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know the precise legal threshold. But I think we can all agree that our government should act with integrity. The SEC, despite the industry asking for clarity, is actively approaching crypto in bad faith. And Charles Gasparino goes back and says, I don't know about bad faith. These are bureaucrats working in a bureaucracy trying to regulate something totally foreign to its mission. Congress needs to step on ASAP. I agree with Congress needs to step on ASAP. I agree with that part, but the bad faith is obvious. And then Brad Garlinghouse responds to his idiotic statement and says, foreign to its mission? Question mark. Their mission is literally starts protect investors. How is that happening here? Is absolutely bad faith, evidenced by the fact that the exact investors they purport to protect are trying to sue them. Exactly. If they were protecting investors, we would not be in that lawsuit. Okay, moving on. We have XRP Millionaire asking Brad Garlinghouse a question in regards to the statement that he made yesterday, where he wrote, wish I could go in depth now, but we've waited this long, 18 plus months. I don't want to overstep. Suffice it to say that Stuart Alderati and I believe they were well worth the wait. And XRP Millionaire says, could this tweet by Brad Garlinghouse actually be referring to a settlement and not about the Hinman emails? Please read carefully. And lo and behold, Brad Garlinghouse actually responded to that question and said no. So just in case anybody was still thinking that a settlement was coming, Brad Garlinghouse himself, the CEO of Ripple, responded to that question and said no. So we are going to see a judge ruling in this case. It will not be a settlement, and I don't blame him. Okay, moving on. Mr. Hubert put this out. Not only did Hinman ask Vitalik, he met 4 times with Lubin before the speech. More evidence of corruption, fraud, or whatever word you want to insert there. Cowboy Crypto puts this thing out in document 831-79, filed June 13th, 2023. Based on the above analysis and subject to the qualifications and assumptions set forth herein, we believe as of the date of the memorandum that you have reasonable grounds to conclude that XRP does not satisfy all the elements of the Howey analysis and is therefore not a security for purposes of the federal securities law. Again, here you have documents saying that maybe not all, but some in the SEC said that XRP does not satisfy all elements of the Howey test, thus saying it is not a security. So moving on, Wrath of Kahneman puts this thing out. He says, good news for the secondary XRP market. The SEC General Counsel emails proposed changes in assessing if crypto is an investment contract, that in Howey, purchasing land was only a security if a service contract was part of it, i.e., not the property itself. That's exactly the case with XRP. So XRP is not a security. We all know that. Okay, moving on. Roslyn and Layton put her statement out. She writes, Hinman emails unmasked SEC showing an agency more concerned about its own turf than protecting investors. They also show a high-ranking official ignoring explicit internal warnings that he was not following the law. And that is evident clearly. Here we have Linda P. Jones with her statement. After the Hinman emails were released, here's what we need to know. Who were the ETH whales? Did they include Hinman and Clayton? And that is something that we need to see, because that will just further bolster the corruption that we already know took place. And here we have a shout out to Weezy. He put out, Coy Garrison, former counsel to Hester Pierce and Bill Hinman, just testified that contrary to what Gary Gensler has said, the rules are not clear. And we all know that. Shout out to Weezy for that. And here is Crypto Law with their statement. These documents also exonerate Chris Lawson and Brad Garlinghouse from the charges of reckless disregard for the rules that Hinman and the SEC staff couldn't agree on. Exactly. How could they possibly have been reckless in selling unregistered securities, and that they should have known when the SEC themselves were at odds whether XRP was a security or not? So this case is pretty much over, and I can't wait for this case to be officially over. And ending with Eleanor Tourette, she puts out, all Republicans on the House Financial Services Committee today sent a letter to the SEC Gov demanding it rescind its proposed rulemaking regarding the definition of exchange, saying it exceeds the agency's statutory authority. And that is good to see that Congress is finally doing something, taking steps to rein in the SEC's overreach. Well, okay, fam, that's going to do it for today's video. If you found this video to be helpful, would you please smash a like and subscribe? I would really appreciate it, and it doesn't cost you anything. Thank you much in advance. And the words of Snoop Dogg, keep your mind on your money and your money on your mind. Peace out, fam.